There is a specific interaction that has been replaying in my mind over the last few days, a quiet exchange that most people might have brushed off as standard operating procedure for a man of his stature. It was Sonny Corinthos walking into the cold, sterile visiting room at Pentonville to sit across from Jen Sidwell. On the surface, it looked like a classic intimidation tactic, a mob boss tying up loose ends or perhaps trying to strike a precarious deal with a dangerous adversary. But something about that moment stayed with me. It was too visible, too deliberate. Sonny is a master of operating in the shadows when he needs to. So why make such a public display of visiting a man who is currently at the center of so much chaos? The conversation behind that glass partition remains a mystery, but the immediate aftermath is what truly caught my attention. Shortly after Sonny walked out of those heavy prison doors, the narrative shifted violently. Sidwell and Curtis Ashford, both vulnerable within the prison walls, were brutally attacked and subsequently rushed to a special medical unit. The sequence of events is too tight, too perfectly aligned. It does not seem accidental. When you look at the timeline, the cause and effect appear undeniable to the untrained eye. Sonny visits Sidwell, presumably fails to reach a mutual agreement, and hours later, Sidwell and Curtis are fighting for their lives. The authorities are going to look at this and see a straight line. They will see a powerful man who did not get what he wanted and resorted to his usual methods of violent persuasion. But I could not stop thinking about the sheer recklessness of it. Sonny Corinthos has survived decades in Port Charles by being calculating, not by throwing a tantrum inside a maximum security facility. If he wanted Sidwell eliminated, he would not have painted a giant target on his own back right before the hit. The timing is a little too perfect, the motive a little too obvious. As we follow this thread, the immediate fallout becomes predictably chaotic. The police are going to swarm, and the fingers are going to point directly at the head of the Corinthos organization. I watch the way the evidence is being curated, the way the whispers in the precinct are already convicting him before a single formal charge is filed. We are witnessing a masterclass in framing, and the speed at which it is happening tells a story of its own. The local authorities are going to arrest Sonny. It is an inevitable conclusion based on the circumstantial breadcrumbs left behind. The PCPD will move in, handcuffs will click, and Sonny will be paraded through the station. It is a scene we have witnessed before, but the undercurrents here are entirely different. In the midst of this impending arrest, there is one person standing firmly against the tide of public opinion and manufactured evidence: Justine Turner. Her role in this unfolding drama is fascinating. While everyone else is looking at the blood in the special unit and drawing the easiest conclusion, Justine remains steadfast. She believes in Sonny's innocence unconditionally, but belief is a fragile shield against the weight of the law. Justine is a brilliant legal mind, but she cannot conjure evidence out of thin air. She knows, deep down, that the narrative has been hijacked, yet she is powerless to stop the machinery of justice from grinding forward. Her unwavering support is a poignant countermelody to the harsh reality of Sonny's situation. She cannot provide the alibi or the proof needed to keep him out of a cell, which means we are going to see Sonny behind bars, stripped of his immediate power and isolated from his allies. This is where we have to look past the obvious frame-up and ask ourselves who actually benefits from this elaborate theater. The shadow beneath the story is vast and chilling. This is not a local turf war. This is not a simple act of mob retaliation. The attack on Sidwell and Curtis was executed with a level of precision that speaks to a much higher, much darker authority. The more I think about it, the more I realize that the strings being pulled here extend far beyond the city limits of Port Charles. We have to look at the World Security Bureau. The WSB has been an invisible, suffocating presence in this town for months, manipulating events, covering up the atrocities of agents like Ross Cullum, and using the citizens of Port Charles as pawns on a global chessboard. The WSB thrives on chaos, especially when that chaos allows them to assert control. Sonny Corinthos is a wild card, a man with enough resources and influence to disrupt their operation. By orchestrating a brutal attack on Sidwell and Curtis, the WSB accomplishes multiple objectives simultaneously. They silence or intimidate their immediate assets, and they perfectly frame the one man who could pose a significant threat to their overarching agenda. This is a sanctioned operation, a ghost protocol designed to look like a mob hit. The blood on the floor of that special unit was not spilled for local territory. It was spilled to shift the balance of power on a much larger scale. So, who pulled the trigger? Who wielded the blade? If the WSB is the architect of this nightmare, who are their instruments? I keep coming back to a theory that seems too horrifying to be true, yet perfectly aligns with the agency's twisted methodology. What if we are missing something monumental about the identities of the attack? In previous discussions, we have explored the lingering presence of ghosts in Port Charles. We have talked about the possibility of Cassius and Morgan Corinthos secretly returning to town. Maybe there is another layer here. It is possible that Morgan did not die in that explosion years ago. It is possible that Cassius's recent supposed death was just another layer of WSB deception. Imagine a scenario where Cassius and Morgan never actually escaped the clutches of the WSB. Instead of being fugitives, what if they are captives? Or worse, what if they have been conditioned, broken down, and rebuilt as Black Ops assets for the Bureau? The idea of Morgan Corinthos being alive is a miracle his family has prayed for, but the reality might be a nightmare. What if the WSB deployed Cassius and Morgan to carry out the hit on Sidwell and Curtis? The psychological cruelty of using Sonny's own presumed dead son to execute a mission that will ultimately frame Sonny and send him to prison is exactly the kind of dark poetry the WSB revels in. Let us dwell on that possibility for a moment. Morgan, moving through the shadows of Pentonville, executing a calculated strike against Sidwell and Curtis, completely detached from the man he used to be. Cassius, operating with cold efficiency, ensuring the evidence points directly to the Corinthos organization. This is not just an attack. It is an emotional and psychological dismantling of Sonny Corinthos, orchestrated by an agency that views human lives as expendable resources. The tragedy of Morgan being the instrument of his father's downfall is a narrative thread so dark, it almost absorbs all the light in the room. As the traps spring shut around Sonny, the tension in Port Charles is going to reach a breaking. The arrest is just the beginning. The real danger lies in how the WSB plans to exploit the fallout. Dante Falconeri is going to find himself in an impossible position. As a detective for the PCPD and Sonny's son, the conflict of interest is glaring. Dante is a man of the law, and he will inevitably have to step away from the investigation to maintain the integrity of the department. He will recuse himself, believing he is doing the right thing, trusting the system to uncover the truth. But I can not shake the feeling that Dante's honorable withdrawal is exactly what the WSB is counting on. They do not just want Sonny arrested, they want him completely isolated and under their absolute control. Once Dante steps back, the WSB will make their move. They will bypass the local authorities, citing Dante's familial connection as a fatal compromise to the PCPD's objectivity. They will argue that the local police force is too entangled with the Corinthos family to conduct a fair investigation. They will use Dante's very existence as the excuse they need to claim jurisdiction over the entire case. The unease grows when you realize the endgame. The WSB will not let Sonny sit in a Port Charles jail cell where Justine can fight for him, where his family can visit him, where his lawyers can file injunctions. They are going to extradite him. They will pull him out of the local system and drag him into the black hole of WSB custody. Sonny will be stripped of his rights, his resources, and his allies, locked away in a federal or international holding facility where the rules no longer apply. The sheer helplessness of watching a titan like Sonny Corinthos being swallowed whole by a faceless government entity is terrifying. And what becomes of our ghosts? Once the chaos is sown, once Sonny is in chains, and the WSB has taken control, Cassius and Morgan will not linger to admire their handiwork. They are assets, tools to be used and then put back in the box. After successfully attacking Sidwell and Curtis and perfectly framing Sonny, they will be forced to retreat into the shadows. They will be pulled back to whatever dark WSB facility they came from, their mission accomplished, their existence remaining a tightly guarded secret. Something feels unfinished. We are watching a man being buried alive by an invisible enemy framed by the ghost of his own son, while the rest of the world believes they are simply watching the long overdue fall of a mob boss. Justine is left fighting a phantom. Dante is left questioning his own department. And Morgan remains a prisoner of his own altered mind, a weapon wielded against his own blood. The story is still unfolding, twisting through the hidden agendas and classified files of an agency that answers to no one. We are only seeing the ripples on the surface of the water, but the monster moving beneath is massive, ancient, and endlessly hungry.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.